What's up, world? Welcome to another edition of I Mix What I Like for the Real News Network. Again, I'm Jared Ball with my main man, Bashi Rose, and we're here today to talk with one of the key organizers of Move to Amend, Kaitlin Sopoci-Belknap. Welcome to I Mix What I Like in the Real News Network.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
So let's start with the broad question of what is Move to Amend and what is it that you're trying to move to amend?
We're trying to move to amend the Constitution of the United States. Move to Amend is a campaign to pass the 28th Amendment to say that only human beings have constitutional rights, not corporations, and that money is not speech, and therefore we could pass legislation to get big money out of politics, those two pieces.
So say something, if you would, for those who may not be as familiar with this concept of corporate personhood. What does that mean, and what role does it currently play in our political world, and what about it needs to be amended?
Well, corporate constitutional rights was invented by lawyers who argued to the Supreme Court actually 130 years ago this week. And it's the idea that corporations have the constitutional rights that human beings have, that we the people have. What that means, in effect, is that when a community or a state or even the federal government passes a law that corporations don't want to follow, they can make the argument that it violates their constitutional rights and overturn that law. Move to Amend was launched in 2010 with the Citizens United ruling. That was kind of just the latest example of corporations being able to claim constitutional rights to, in that case, overturn federal law that restricted their ability to contribute money in elections. And so it has vastly and wide implications beyond just money in politics, but that's kind of the current trend. But also corporations recently have been granted by the Supreme Court freedom of religion, and a case where Hobby Lobby claimed that it was not required to give health care to women because it violated the corporation's religion to provide reproductive health services. And so kind of the sky's the limit on their part as long as corporations can claim constitutional rights. It's not in the Constitution, obviously, that corporations do, but the Supreme Court has consistently ruled that they do, which is why an amendment is necessary to basically overturn the court, just like an amendment was necessary to make clear that women had a right to vote when the Supreme Court consistently ruled that they did not actually have. So, and you know, many other examples as well. And so that's kind of like, it's not the final way to solve the problem, because then there's the whole contest afterwards to make sure that what you put in there actually gets followed through on. The way that corporations first were able to claim constitutional rights was by claiming the 14th Amendment, which, you know, if folks don't remember, is the amendment that was passed, one of them after the Civil War to guarantee personhood to black men who had been slaves, and corporations were actually able to use that more effectively than black folks or women. And so part of what Move to Amend is really just a struggle for social justice, continuing this struggle of who's going to be a person in our country and recognized as a person. And right now we have this complete bastardization that it's corporations, when yet and still even many people cannot claim the full rights under the Constitution. So we see ourselves as part of this long history of the Constitution coming short and not really including everyone. And many people have organized and built movements to drive themselves in, and then corporations did to partly undermine, you know, those people's movements. And so we have to correct that legal fallacy that has huge cultural, economic, political implications right now.
Now, this issue is getting new life, particularly in popular media right now, particularly around the Bernie Sanders campaign and his insistence on this issue of getting big money out of politics. So there's this one push. So that is one push, on one hand, to work within the Democratic Party to allow the Democratic Party to become a more progressive by allowing non-corporate candidates to be run within that party. But of course, this issue is also important to those of us who want room for so-called alternative parties to flourish. Could you talk a little bit about how Move to Amend sees this issue playing out, both in terms of this idea of a progressive push within the Democratic Party, opening up space that way, but then also opening up space for other electoral formations to develop?
Yeah, well, I mean, Move to Amend is officially nonpartisan. We have people from many different parties that are involved in our ranks and work together, and sometimes it's, there's disagreements on that piece. But I think at the end of the day, we have as one of our principles maintaining political independence as an organization. So, if any of the parties can be used to further our agenda, which is not just passing this amendment, but seeing social justice and real democracy actually happen for the first time in this country in our laws, then we're not necessarily opposed to that right now, though seeing the establishment Democratic Party respond to the Bernie Sanders campaign, I would say there's a lot of reason for cynicism about whether that is at all an institution where that can take hold. But there are certainly a lot of people who are trying to do that through the Sanders campaign. And, many of them are Move to Amend folks. Many of them know that. Many of them might not know it yet. They might not know us. But the momentum and energy and call for a political revolution is exciting and the right call, but it is still a question of whether that institution is actually one that's going to suppress that call or can basically be taken over and, pushed forward. And, I'm a Green, so we'll see what happens.
So what would you like for people who see this interview and for those who hear about Move to Amend, what is it that you're calling for people to do? What are the next steps? And ultimately, what do you see this movement accomplishing?
Well, Move to Amend is a grassroots campaign. We're here in Washington, D.C. right now, but we're not housed here because we actually have our base of power in the States. I live in California. We have folks all over the country. So the best way for people to get involved is to start to come, join the conversation with us. You can go to movetoamend.org. And click on the Sign the Petition button, and that just brings you into the conversation. You can also look and see if there's an affiliate near you. If folks are in the DC area, we actually don't have a local group here right now, but we do have some folks who are working on that. So connect with us. You can see where we have groups across the country. And that's how we are getting it done. So we're here because we just had our first National Leadership Summit where we brought in all of our grassroots local folks and had an amazing conference. We learned about, the history of personhood and the connections to white supremacy. We learned about the amazing work that's happening here in the D.C. area and how we can connect and do solidarity organizing with people who are working on some of the more symptoms of corporate rule and connect it to addressing it as we are doing at the legal level. And we are, probably going to be back in this area again, but for now, most of our work is happening at the state level and the community level because that's the only way that movements have been built, and we know that. So we'll come to D.C. when we're good and ready, and until then, we're just keeping our eye on, not y'all, but, those guys on Capitol Hill.
Well, Kaitlin, thanks for joining us here at I Mix What I Like for The Real News. We appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you so much. It was good to see you again.
And thank you for joining us. And for all involved, again, I'm Jared Ball, now in Washington, D.C. for I Mix What I Like in the Real News Network, saying, as Fred Hampton used to say, to you we say peace if you're willing to fight for it. So peace, everybody, and we'll catch you in the whirlwind.
I mix what I